Hello everyone, my name is Gaurav Bakshi, and today we bring to you the first edition of Strat-Chat, an endeavor which brings you up close and personal with HR leaders and helps you bring their insights to you. So today we have with us Neha Saxena Shenoy. She is the global D&I leader with RB. Glad to have you with us, Neha. And it's such an amazing feeling to be with you here today. Just at the onset, wish to ask you, the whole concept of D&I, the way it's shaping up, right? Moving from diversity to diversity inclusion, and now people are talking about diversity, inclusion, and equality. Where are you seeing this headed, and what's your take on how this whole thing is shaping up?
Right, Gaurav. First of all, it's an absolute delight to be with you and to be talking to all of the viewers. I want to share that I've been actually working in the whole space of diversity and inclusion for the last about 8 years across organizations like GE, Microsoft, and now at RB. And during my 8 years, I've seen this field evolve tremendously, and it's a very exciting phase for us. As you rightly said, it started out with diversity, and it was more of diversity of thought and elements beyond gender, like people with disabilities, people with different sexual orientations have gradually come into the fore. The second element which got added on was inclusion, and it was about creating the right ecosystem and involving everybody, irrespective of the color of their skin, the color of their hair, the gender, and the sexual orientation into the main field. So that was more next step in the journey of inclusion. And then, like you rightly said, now conversations are on about equality. And there's in fact even conversation which is beginning to happen on equity. So equality, right, of course, is making sure that everybody is treated equally, and equity is really about making sure that the playing field is leveled for everybody, because everyone has a different starting point.
Sure.
So I think it's a very exciting phase to be working in diversity and inclusion, and there's a lot of changes that we brought about, and a lot of changes that I'm looking forward to bringing ahead.
So just as a follow-up, I like how you sort of set the definitions out there. But in terms of the organizational objectives, how would you say that an organization should really define their objectives in these areas?
Right. So from a diversity perspective, a great way for organizations to think about is who are they going to market with. So if their consumer set is diverse, which for a large set of organizations is, most organizations are actually framing their diversity goals in line with that. So they're trying to make sure that the organization inside represents the customers or the consumers outside. As far as inclusion is concerned, this is a core part of the culture, and organizations which are focusing on inclusion are thinking about how well are they engaging people from different backgrounds and getting them to bring the best to work.
Sure.
Within the setup. And then the third piece, which is in terms of equity or equality, that's where organizations are looking at what can they do really to make sure that people who are from underrepresented groups are actually included in the organization, and what tools, techniques can they provide to make sure that they are successful in the organization. So one way in which organizations are looking at it, let's say in context of people with disabilities, is that they're looking at how can they provide tools to not just hire more people with disabilities in jobs and that may suit them, but they're also looking at redesigning jobs in such a way that people with disabilities are actually equipped as well as they find it, they set up for success to manage that job. And they're of course making sure that the ecosystem, so be it in terms of special software, be it in terms of leader sensitization, all of that is done so that the software and the hardware really supports them to be set up for success.
Interesting. So lots happening in this space clearly. And with such a large agenda that organizations are trying to yield, obviously it changes the spectrum of how HR responds to it. So what in your view is the role of HR that HR has to play in it, and how does it ensure that it's actually moving beyond to creating some real impact?
Absolutely. HR has a very significant role to play in this front, and I've seen multiple organizations where HR has actually been on the front foot on this journey, where HR has been a believer that diversity and inclusion actually leads up to business results, and then they've gone about evangelizing it with the business in exactly the same tone, that's where the results have been so much more superior. I think all of us have gone through so many studies which actually say how teams which are diverse and boards which are diverse end up having much more ROI, and companies grow much faster. So HR organizations which have embedded that message into the entire life cycle of an employee, right from hire to retire, and they're looking at every single process through a diversity lens, those organizations have actually had greater success with harnessing the power of diversity and inclusion. The last thing I want to say is that one expectation or request of HR community would be that this is a journey, and there are elements on this which will take time. So it's really important to have patience and to keep your ear close to the ground. I think HR has played a very significant role in my experience in organizations where they've not just brought in people from an underrepresented group into the organization, but they've actually set up the ecosystem for success. By that I mean they've actually, one, made sure that the manager who's working with people from underrepresented group is aware of what they need to do differently. Two, it means that they have the leadership support to really land that underrepresented group successfully. Three, it means really coaching. And four, it means listening, seeking feedback, making sure that we're acting on that feedback on a constant basis so that overall the strength of the ecosystem is brought forward.
Interesting. So I really like the concept of, interweaving D&I in the larger framework of the employee life cycle, as you mentioned, and it seems that organizations have a lot to do, and HR has a big role to play. But tell me, for organizations who are yet to get on the path with so much to do, sometimes it can be a very daunting task, and creating a collective buy-in and so on and so forth. A lot of work has to be done. What's in your recommendation the right strategy for organizations which are starting the path? Should they look at it in a more linear manner, taking maybe one step at a time, or they have a larger holistic goal right up front? What's your suggestion to organizations and HR leaders, just starting on the journey?
Right. So I want to share the experience that I've had over the past 8 years in strategizing the entire D&I journey of organizations. And in my experience, what has worked better is to treat D&I just like you would treat a new product line in the business. Mm-hmm. So if you are looking to, let's say, as a business, invest in a new product line, chances are that you would actually create a 3-year plan for that product line. You would also put in investments, let's say, in terms of producing the product, be it in terms of factories or capital expenditure that you may do on equipment. You'd also maybe put in effort in terms of marketing this entire product line and really creating the brands or the ads that will reach the consumers of this product line. And one looks at investing effort in terms of measuring the change and then looping back into the design phase every single year to figure out what has worked, what has not worked as well. So it's exactly the same logic, I would say, with diversity and inclusion. Where I've had success is really when I've walked in to the CEO of organizations with a 3-year plan, saying this is how our overall vision, let's say, for a 3-year period looks like, and then clearly set milestones backwards from there on an annual basis. Usually, like I said, diversity and inclusion takes a slightly longer time frame to bear fruit. So it's very important to really pace ourselves out and really make sure that the impact is being felt through the course of the 3 years, not just as a flash in the pan.
Right.
In one experience that I'd like to share, while I was at GE, I was working closely with the then CEO there, and I think he was really, really passionate about this space. And he, of course, encouraged me to think about what am I recommending as a 3-year plan backed by data. And in fact, he was very progressive enough to, in fact, not just break down the 3-year plan into an annual plan, but also break it down with me into a quarterly plan.
Wow.
And in fact, he went ahead and really challenged me to publish that quarterly plan through his email to everybody, all the 15,000 employees that were there in GE at that time, and say that this is what we're trying to do over the next 3 years. Here is what we will do this quarter, and I will give you as the CEO of the organization, a quarterly update on where we are relative to what we committed to do.
That's phenomenal. I think one of the rare stories that we get to hear, but I think must have been very exciting to be for you to have been a part of this journey there.
Absolutely.
And sheer commitment. You're saying 15,000 employees getting to see and understand and analyze how you've been progressing over a 3-year journey. So that's loud commitment up there. But at the same time, while we are seeing a lot of leaders and organizations demonstrate deep commitment, like you mentioned, there are also organizations where HR or D&I leaders yet face the challenge of making things move. What's your take on that, and how do you suggest maybe overcome some of these challenges, and how do you go about that?
The biggest challenge is actually the biggest enabler in this journey of diversity, inclusion, and equity. Thankfully, leadership in a lot of organizations is really realizing how diversity and inclusion actually contributes to bigger business results, and that helps them come on board. In case you're working with a leader who's really not yet on board with the whole diversity and inclusion conversation and agenda, one recommendation which I have is to really talk to them in their language. So talk to them in the language of business, impress upon them how diversity and inclusion actually leads up to better business results, show them data. That's something which I've seen work extremely well with leaders. So be it in terms of data that you have about attrition, and how much productivity loss is occurring as a result of, let's say, lower engagement levels and attrition, or show them data in terms of what other organizations are doing, what customer segments are they capturing simply because they have a different diverse and inclusive team, and which markets are they most successful at simply because, again, their teams might be differently structured than yours are. These are conversations which usually get the business leaders' attention and get them to focus on diversity and inclusion as a business imperative. The second element that I would say is that all of us, from a challenge perspective, are up against actually centuries of conditioning. There are a whole lot of gender and societal roles that we all deal with, and they cause a lot of biases, conscious and unconscious. In my experience, what I've seen is that what helps is to talk about conscious inclusion and steps to get to inclusive behavior, rather than only to talk about unconscious biases, because, and I'm sure research has also proven this, that too much of conversation about unconscious biases actually makes those unconscious biases even more deeply embedded.
Wow.
So it actually helps to talk about what can you do to be more inclusive, and how does that impact your business better, how does it impact you as a leader better, how does it impact, let's say, your performance rating better, and position it in that lens rather than talking about it purely from an unconscious bias perspective.
Interesting. So you're saying loads and loads of data,
Right.
and telling people what to do versus what not to do.
Right.
Because saying what not to do and upheaving the whole unconscious bias piece may actually very interestingly put them put those behaviors back again. You're saying
Exactly.
very interesting. We get so many requests from organizations all over who are trying to do sessions on unconscious bias, but this is very interesting data point. Moving forward, Neha, I'm sure you've had a stellar journey of D&I, and globally you are seeing a lot of success stories that may have been created across the organization. Maybe what's one story close to your heart which you'd like to share with our audience here, and something which is really your moment of truth of D&I having arrived?
Right. For me as an individual, I actually derive a lot of energy from these personal stories, frankly. If I look back, it's very easy to forget the next promotion, it's very easy to forget the title change that comes, but it's very difficult to forget the kind of impact that one has had on other people's lives.
Right.
And that's what personally just energizes me a lot. I want to talk about a recent story, which is in my current organization, and my organization is a health, hygiene and home organization, and the business unit I work in is RB Health. Essentially, it's got a lot of typical consumer goods sales workforce, and the typical perception in Indian market is that women can't really do sales, especially in our tier 3, tier 4 towns and cities. I want to share a story of this individual who works with me. She's a dear colleague. She actually is someone who grew up in a very protected environment in a very small town. She was not encouraged by her parents to even in fact go outside of the city for her education, and with great difficulty she got admission in a MBA school in Lucknow, which was about 500 kilometers from where she lived, and with great difficulty she managed to convince her parents to actually send her there. That just opened up her world, and then as she went to that college she realized that there's just so much that one can do. Luckily, during her college internship, she landed a sales internship, and everyone told her don't take it up because it's UP, and there were perceptions about safety. Not to say that UP is any safer or less safe relative to other parts of the world, but that was the feedback that she got. And despite all of those challenges, she actually soldiered on.
Right.
She took up that internship, and then she realized that sales is not really a man's job; it can be done by anyone, and that really set her up for the love for sales. A couple of years later, she actually joined us when she was really early in her career. And as she joined our organization, she realized that the team that she was working with, 12 people, they were all much older than her and they were all men.
Yeah.
And then they looked at her and said, "Acha, inki baat ab sunni padegi, abhi hame batayenge humko karna kya hai." And the sentiment was not very positive. She started talking to her primary customers who were her distributors, and then she realized that all of them were pretty much her father's age. They completely ignored her because they thought that she will go away in a matter of few months, possibly get married or start working in finance or HR or one of those desk jobs. They continued to talk to her predecessor and talk about things that she should be doing to the predecessor as well. So it wasn't a very happy situation. On top of it, the external environment wasn't great either. So those of us who've lived and worked in India, they know this. From an infrastructure perspective, it's a huge spectrum, particularly when it comes to even something as basic as, let's say, clean sanitation and washroom facilities around particularly tier 2, tier 3 towns. Those are a challenge. The other element is that as she was early in her career, she had to travel a lot and stay long days and nights in remote places. Sometimes those places did not even have the right setup as far as infrastructure on hotels or on transport is concerned. And she actually came to us in one of the listening sessions that we did, and she brought up these elements as real challenges that she's facing from the external environment. And I think thanks to the feedback that she gave us, as well as other women in the business gave us, we actually modified our policies. So we changed our policies so that they actually are so much more friendly, not just for women who are, let's say, in remote parts of India, but also for men who are in a place which is unsafe. We provided, let's say, transport facilities which were verified and which we knew are safe for men as well as women who are working in really late hours or really early hours in the morning. We also looked at how we can provide her a safe environment from a sanitation and washroom perspective. So all of this actually enabled her to unleash her best in the workplace, and I'm really proud to say that it's been almost 2 years that today she has been one of the top performers in the country as far as sales is concerned, and her team of 12 people for the past 24 months, every single month they have made their incentive. She one day got a call from an unidentified number on her mobile phone, and it was a young girl who was calling her. And she was actually the daughter of one of the colleagues' team members. And that daughter told my colleague that thanks to you, my dad is now letting me go to a college outside of my small town that I live in.
It's just so inspiring.
Exactly. And she's someone who continues to inspire me every single day. I really am powered by stories of her and creating that success, not just for her, but for the whole ecosystem as a consequence of what we do in diversity and inclusion.
Fantastic. I think hats off, kudos. And sometimes, Neha, all it takes is just those little steps. I'm sure changing policies and those things is sometimes seen with a lot of, that it's a very difficult thing to go out and do. But I think if you're just conscious of delivering the end goal properly and making those finer adjustments, I think a lot can be achieved, and this story is quite amazing. Well, moving to the last part of our interaction today, uh, everything in HR is, seen with a view to get measured, and now, even as a DNI leader, I'm sure you've put in place your own set of uh, data sets or metrics, which lets you, keep moving the ball forward. Uh, so, would you want to share a few important metrics which HR and DNI leaders should start tracking to ensure their progress?
Absolutely, and this is a very critical element of the whole D&I journey, because what gets measured is what gets done. Also, if you want to move the needle on things, you need to provide visibility, especially to senior leaders,
Right.
and make this a part of the regular business as usual. So, few things which I would encourage anyone who's relatively new to the journey and is starting out. One is really from the entire employee life cycle, embed metrics from a D&I perspective into your regular HR scorecards that you may have. This means right from the point of talent attraction, what does the funnel look like from a external talent attraction perspective? During the selection process, in which stage are you seeing, let's say, more men, more women pass through the funnel? Where are you seeing the roadblocks come up? So, interesting story is in my current organization, we actually saw that a lot of times for jobs, the number of CVs that were being shortlisted for women were much lower for men than for men. And then we realized that we experimented with something called a mass CV and a blind CV.
Right.
And then we realized that as a consequence of experimenting with that, the number of CVs of women that got shortlisted were actually far more than before, and that really helped us question our own unconscious bias and really move towards more inclusion. So that's as far as hiring is concerned. As far as the remaining employee steps of the employee life cycle are concerned, so be it in terms of equal pay for equal work, or gender pay reporting, those are elements which organizations increasingly are not just doing internally but are also publishing externally for the world to know where they stand. There are metrics which are being looked at as far as career progression and career velocity are concerned, and they look at underrepresented groups versus majority and make sure that the velocities are of a certain nature.
Right.
There's also metrics in terms of development. So development in terms of not just numbers, in terms of how many, let's say, people went through a developmental intervention or had a mentor or had an opportunity to attend an external learning forum, but it's also in terms of, let's say, what are you doing to create the right ecosystem, and that has three parts to it. So one part is clearly working on the entire learning architecture and making sure that it's providing equal opportunities for people of all backgrounds. The second leg to it is really making sure that managers, leaders, and the majority group are open, receptive, and they're working to the maximum extent possible, to the best extent possible with people of the underrepresented group. And then the third piece is working with the underrepresented group themselves. And I'll share this more in context of women. A lot of times what happens is that their challenges are unique. And because not a lot of them are in the workforce, sometimes it helps to bring them together, get them to understand how can they bridge those challenges and really create their own ways to be successful, not by being like a man, but being just the authentic self that they are.
Sure.
And continue to work from that strength. So I think that's the third piece in terms of development. And then, of course, the good metrics in terms of retention, beat attrition, and then slicing and dicing that to see where your problem areas are, what could be the causes. That's one big set of metrics. The second set of metrics which organizations are increasingly looking at is the culture metrics. And again, there are two legs to this. The first leg is internal. So this could be, let's say, the culture pulse surveys or the employee engagement or the manager effectiveness surveys done and sliced, diced by either gender, generation, ability, whatever you want to look at as well. That also gives you a very clear picture in terms of what actions need to be taken. The third leg, which organizations are in a nascent stage on, is social listening.
Sure.
As far as diversity and inclusion is concerned, organizations are of course focused on how their employer brand is in the market, and many organizations are also beginning to look at not just Glassdoor, but also apps like Blind which give anonymous feedback of current employees, former employees,
Right.
as well as prospective employees on the employer brand. So all in all, my recommendation to someone who's starting out the journey would be to look at the 360-degree picture, so that it gives you a full picture of where we are, and then use that almost like a funnel to diagnose what your challenges are, and then use that data to your advantage to frame the business case for it for your leaders, and then use that as your strategy and the roadmap. And I'm sure with time things will work out very well.
Wow, that's like that's quite a lot of data and quite a lot of analysis. And what you're really saying is that genuinely interweave diversity data, inclusion data in all metric, right, while having specialized metric to it. Anyway, so thank you so much, Neha. It's been a real pleasure speaking with you, and I'm sure some of our viewers will definitely take away a lot of bites. Good luck to you in this agenda, and keep shining. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gaurav.
Thank you.